Could one of you turn this light up here off? Probably easier for everyone to see. Thank you so much. There we go. Thank you. Is that better? A little better? Okay. Another 30 seconds or so. All right. As you all know, hopefully this is exam week. This is 200 points. This is not something to be taken lightly. So make sure you take it seriously, you study, you do the review, you look over the old quizzes, you go over maybe any lectures that you missed or didn't understand that well, reread chapters of the book you may find confusing, etc. One thing I would not suggest, unless you've done all of those things, is I would not suggest doing SmartWorks math problems, okay? I don't ask that kind of question, as you can tell from my quizzes. Hopefully you find them a little more reasonable, I think, than some of those SmartWorks questions. So I would not suggest doing that, so please don't waste your time doing a bunch of math problems in SmartWorks. That's not a good way to study for the exam. So today I'll answer any questions people might have. I will also go over quiz 2. I might do that first if no one has any questions. Exam 1 is going to be accessible until Friday. The exams are the only thing that are not due Thursday at midnight. You can do it Thursday before midnight if you want. But I want to give you a full week because I know does anyone here have more than one midterm this week? A couple people? Okay, so that's why I'm giving you this flexibility. So if your professor in your class is saying, do it Thursday or Friday, you guys might want to do it Wednesday. Okay, I'm trying to give you guys some flexibility. So take advantage of that if you have multiple midterms this week. We still have Chapter 5 Inquisitive and Chapter 6 SmartWorks because we're going to start. Actually, I have that backwards. No, I have that right. Chapter 6 SmartWorks I suggest doing before you take the exam because that's still content that's going to be on the exam. And if you don't plan on taking the exam Friday, but on Thursday or earlier, I suggest doing Chapter 5 Inquisitive after the exam because nothing in Chapter 5 is on the exam. So don't use that as a study guide or anything. Nothing in Chapter 5 is on the exam. It's just Chapters 1 through 4 and Chapter 6. And if there's anyone here who lacks a webcam, Thursday at 2 o'clock, the normal class time here, can give you a code to log you in and you'll have 80 minutes. Get here at 2, not at 2:10, because I want to give you the full time to take the exam. All right, does that describe anyone in this room? Does anyone plan on coming on Thursday who's in this room at the moment? One person? Okay, so come at 2 o'clock. And for those of you listening live or watching the later recording, come at 2 o'clock Thursday if you don't have a webcam or if you have a computer that for some reason doesn't allow Respondus, which I think is only Google Chromebook, if anyone has that. Okay, any questions about these items? Yes. Sure. Good question. So I've set it up so that you should not need, so the question was, can we use paper? The answer is no, but I've set it up just like the review, where I will provide the picture for you or a table for you in most cases. Now, if you guys can give me feedback on that. This is different. I usually give a paper exam, and if that's a big deal in the future, I can look into changing that. But keep in mind, if I change that, that means I can give you questions without the picture where you're going to have to draw the picture yourself. So it'll change the nature of the question itself. That might be good, it might be bad, and it might just depend on the person as well. Do you have a question in the back, or are you just playing? Okay. All right. So again, the question was, can you use pencil or paper? The answer is no, but the test is designed so that you shouldn't need it. But you're more than welcome to give me feedback, and I'm open to changing the exam structure in exam 2 and the final exam, but that means I would give you questions without pictures or tables and expect you to be able to do it. Okay, just a couple things about the exam before I go over quiz 2, unless there's other questions. Think about the obvious stuff I'm going to ask you. It's obvious I'm going to ask you about positive statements or normative statements. So know what that is. Those are give me questions. You don't want to miss those questions. I'm going to ask you about comparative advantage and absolute advantage. Make sure you know what those things are. There's going to be some sort of trade question. There is a good chance there could be a thinking at the margin question. Anyone know what I mean by that, thinking at the margin question? Yes, go ahead. Right, so like the dozen egg example the student said, perfect, that's right. Like the egg example, right? You have to buy the whole carton, so the cost of the first egg is the cost of the carton, and then the other 11 eggs cost nothing, all right? Obviously, there's going to be questions on shifting supply or demand. There could be a PPC question, so make sure you're familiar with those graphs. There's going to be questions about elasticity. When you go over the review, think about, well, how could the professor also ask this on the exam? And in some cases, I actually ask it the same way. Right, so if you remember, one question I asked is, I think this was on a quiz. I can't remember this. Maybe, no, this wasn't on a quiz actually, but under what conditions would you want to raise your price always as a firm? When demand is elastic or when demand is inelastic? Inelastic, right? And you might say, well, with elastic, you'd want to lower your price. Not necessarily. So when demand is inelastic and you raise your price, you get more revenue, which is good. What happens to cost? You're selling fewer items, so what happens to your cost? Your revenue goes up, and what happens to your cost? It goes down. So most of you are business majors. Do you like more revenue and less cost? Yes. So if the demand curve for your product is inelastic, you want to raise your price. If demand is elastic, you may or may not want to lower the price. But if the cost of letting another person or another customer is zero, in other words, your cost is nothing, then you want to lower it. And I gave some examples like putting someone in this classroom. Okay. Any other hints I can think of? So just like the quiz, and I'll talk about this, I could give you a product. You need to know, whether it's elastic or inelastic, or I could give you a list of products, which is going to have the most inelastic demand curve. For example, an EpiPen is going to have a more inelastic demand curve than Morton salt, all right, because you need it to survive. So lots of different types of questions. Yes? Sure. Is it a question about a quiz question or just a general question? Okay. Okay. So I'm about to go through the quiz. So maybe one of those questions that I can answer that question as I go through quiz 2. So the student asked about whether a curve was elastic or inelastic. Is that correct? Okay. That actually leads me to another hint for the exam. First off, I will never make you do the midpoint formula. I think I said that before. That will not be on the exam. Elasticity, I am not going to actually even make you calculate elasticity by giving you percentages. I'm not going to do that. All right. So if that was what your question relates to, I'm not sure. So why don't we go through quiz 2? And by the way, anyone can stop me and ask me a question about the exam or about the quiz as I go through it. And I'm happy, so write down questions you might have so that I can answer them afterwards. All right, so let me pull it up. Let me get the... There we go. Sorry, I don't know how to get rid of that echo. A food truck would probably be elastic because there's lots of substitutes, right? So let me pull up the quiz and maybe we can. So I think everyone is taking quiz 2. If you haven't, please don't cheat and watch this while you're live streaming. But I believe everyone's taking it. Well, 97 of you out of, for those who didn't take it, you should. So the first one I gave you was Richard Thaler. All right, that was just a gravy give me point. I'll tell you there's a give me point on the exam. It's the same as one of the quiz questions. Who is the founder of economics? Adam Smith. Okay, it's on the exam, I'm telling you right now. All right, this question, most people got it, but some people missed it. When the price is below the equilibrium price, sellers raise prices and buyers bid higher prices in order to reach the equilibrium price. Why is that false? Without reading. Some of you are reading already. Without reading, why is that false? Why is that statement false? No? Is it anyone's goal to reach equilibrium? No. Why do sellers raise their prices? So they get more money. Why are buyers bidding up? So they can get the item. No one's doing it to reach equilibrium. They're doing it because they're maximizing their profit, or in the case of buyers, they're maximizing their own well-being. They want the lowest cost possible, but they want the item. All right, question 3, refer to the accompanying graph. Which of the following scenarios would explain this change in equilibrium? A number of firms left the market. Would that explain this? No, that would mean supply would shift to the left, right? Everyone agree with that? A number of buyers entered the market and a number of firms entered the market. If it was just the first part of that statement, it would be correct. But that second part of the statement makes it wrong because there would also be a supply shift. The price of a complement good increase. That would actually shift demand to the left. Right? If the price of peanut butter goes up, fewer people are going to want jelly. That's the typical complements, right? So demand would shift to the left in that case, not to the right. Correct answer is D, the price of a substitute good decreased. The price of this good increase, E, is wrong. Remember, we move along the curve for prices, the price of a known good. Refer to the accompanying graph. Which of the following would cause the supply curve to shift to the right? Consumers earn higher income, that affects demand. Consumers earn lower income, that also affects demand. The price of an input increase, that affects supply, but it goes the other way, right? Firms are going to want to produce less of the output, not more at any given price, if it costs more to make the good. Firms entered the market is correct. Firms expected for the price to rise in the future is not correct, because what it's going to happen is it's going to shift to the left because they're going to want to sell in the future instead of today. All right, this might be getting to the question you had. I'm not sure. Maybe, maybe not. For the accompanying table, we can see that the demand curve for ice skates by hockey players will be blank than the demand curve for recreational skaters. So if you look at these graphs, which one of them has more responsive consumers? So notice the change here is 10, the change here is 10, so it's about the same there. But then the change here is 15, then the change here is 20, and the change here is 20. Well, here the change is 10, the change is 10, and the change is 15. So this right side has consumers that are always more responsive, right? And so that means this on the left is going to be steeper, right? Hockey players have more inelastic demand. Remember, inelastic curves are steeper. And this shouldn't be any surprise. If you're a hockey player, do you need hockey skates to play? Yes. If you're an amateur skater, can you do something else? Yes, you can go rollerblading instead, for example. So even if you didn't know the numbers, you could maybe just guess it. And don't ever underestimate your own intuition. I'm not saying just guess on the exam. Try to figure it out looking at the numbers, but you can use your intuition sometimes to help you. You have a question? Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, that would shift it to the left. Yeah, yeah. Good question. So the person in the audience asked about part C here, the price of an input increased. Oops. And in that case, supply would shift left, not right. All right, question 4. As we move along a demand curve, and I actually wish they would have added one more word, but we're only using linear demand anyway. As we move along a linear demand curve, the price elasticity of demand becomes more elastic. That's always true. Remember, one of those determinants of elasticity is the percent of income you spend on that good. So as the price goes up, the percent income you spend on the good goes up. So it should be intuitive. That's why things that are very expensive, like cars and houses, have more elastic demand, even if they might not have very many substitutes. Because it's so expensive, you're going to rethink even maybe a 5 or 10% increase in price. Whereas something like gum that you obviously could survive without and has lots of substitutes, you might buy even if it goes up 20% because it's just so inexpensive to begin with. All right, so again, try to think about some economic logic when going through these problems. And hopefully most of you guessed A or C, right? I think most people did. So here, I apologize, I had a typo. I had the correct answer twice, A and D. Sometimes I had to manually go in and fix. So it might have an X next to it, but then you'll see you got 2 out of 2 points. You still got your 2 points if you didn't contact me, but it should say 2 of 2 points as long as you put both decrease. Okay, both decrease. So why is that? Oh, hold on, there seems to be a question. The projector seems to be in the way of the questions. I will try to keep a better eye on that. I apologize. But it isn't at the moment, and I can, you yourself can also look at the review in the grade book. So I encourage you to look in the review in the grade book while we go through it. But I will try to make sure you can see it and the projector doesn't block it. I apologize for that. All right, so there. Refer to the accompanying table. The price elasticity of demand for erasers is blank when the price is lowered from $1.50 to $1. Sellers of erasers will blank their total revenue because of this price change. So I try to give you a hint. Hopefully, maybe some of you listened and heard it. I know I talk a lot, so it's easy to overlook. The key here is to look at revenue and then figure out the elasticity. So what is the revenue at $1.50? What's the total revenue at $1.50? So if I asked you how much money is the firm making if it charges $1.50, what's the answer? In terms of revenue, 70 units, right? Oh, sorry, I said that wrong. So I said that wrong. What erasers? So we have $1.50 times 10 is let's see here. That's going to be $15, right? Everyone agree? So the revenue from erasers is $15. The revenue from charging $1 is $11. All right. So you lower your price, you go from $15 to $11. What happens to your revenue when you're lowering your price? It's going down, right? Remember, if you lower your price and revenue goes down, that means demand is inelastic, right? And if you look at my old notes, and I didn't bring them, but if you look at the old lecture notes on elasticity, I have a table that says what happens with price and total revenue when demand is elastic or inelastic. All right, so the trick here is to look at the revenue and then figure out the elasticity. Right, so revenue goes down, it goes from 15 to 11, but we know if revenue goes down, when the price goes down, that means it's inelastic. Yes. Did I look at the wrong one? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I'm not. But you should get the same thing with erasers. I apologize. I said it for pencils. I should have been looking at erasers. So this should be, let's see here. So 7 times $1.50 is going to be $10.50, right? And then it's $8 here. So the logic is the same. I apologize. Thank you for correcting me. So someone pointed out, I looked at the wrong demand schedule. I looked at pencils instead of erasers. But it turns out even if you made the same mistake on the quiz, you would have got it right. So that's a good thing. All right, suppose the price of so these I wrote, obviously you can tell. Suppose the price of medical school increases. How does this impact the market for doctors? Explain. The most important thing I'm looking for is this last sentence, which I'll get to at the end, obviously. So some people just put this last sentence and you would get credit in that case. But what happens? Well, supply is going to shift left. If it becomes a lot more expensive to become a doctor, remember, this is a labor market, so people are the suppliers, firms are the demanders. Fewer people are going to become doctors, right? It's a cost of production. In order to become a doctor, what do you need? You need an MD. And so what happens is the supply of doctors shifts left. And most people put that there's going to be fewer doctors. That's correct. And you got partial credit. Okay. So if you put there's going to be fewer doctors, you got between 1 and 2 points depending on what else you put. If you put a bunch of garbage in there, you'll probably get 1. Where if you put, other stuff, you would have got 2. But it's not just that there's fewer doctors. What's going to happen to the wages of doctors? They're going to go up. The wages of doctors are going to go up to alleviate the shortage. In fact, we can draw a picture of what's going to happen. In fact, maybe we should do that. And I want to do that because some people said something that was not correct. So I'll put W. This is a labor market. So this is the market for doctors. Make sure people can see it. So supply shifts back to the left. Some people said there's going to be a shortage of doctors. Well, maybe in the short run, but what's going to happen is those wages are eventually going to go up, right? So this is the initial wage. This is the new wage. In order to get rid of that shortage, hospitals are going to bid up salaries of doctors to get them in the field. As the wage goes up, all right, that shortage will be eliminated. Yes? So on these problems, assume that both happen sort of within the problem. We're actually going to have a formal definition of short run and long run later in the class. So I actually regret using those words. So think of it as happening very quickly in this case, right? In response, to it. And actually, I don't know if you've noticed, we actually haven't really talked about the process of time. And that's intentional because that makes things more difficult, but we will later in the course. So the wage goes up, the quantity goes down. So if you said the quantity go down, there's a good chance you got at least 1.5 or 2 points. But here's where you might have only got 1 instead of that 2 points. Some people said, well, supply shifts left and then demand shifts. Is there any demand shift here? There's no demand shift. The quantity demanded changes, right? And maybe that's what people were referring to. I'm not sure, but there's no demand shift in this problem. All right. And I tried to give everyone as much partial credit as I could, okay? I really do. The final question, consider the following good. Ventilators. Describe the elasticity of demand of a patient who needs a ventilator, mostly covered by insurance. What would this curve look like? So let me just say something. Answer every question. Some people got 3 out of 4 points because they forgot to answer part of the question. So first off, it's inelastic, right? And why is it inelastic? So we have to describe it and why. It's inelastic because, are there any substitutes for ventilators if you have COVID-19 and you need a ventilator? No. All right, so it's a life-saving, it's mostly covered by insurance, so you're not going to be like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this cost, right? So you don't care about that. It's a need, not a want. All right, so and it's something you need in the short term. So all those things are going to make it very inelastic. So some people did that. They got 3 or 4 points, but you didn't answer the full question. What are you omitting if that's all you said were those things? What does it look like? So some people said it's vertical. I'll give you vertical. It's probably vertical for some prices, so I gave it to you, full credit. The best answer is it's very, very steep, right? It might be vertical portions, but it's very, very steep, the demand curve, because it's inelastic. So the reason I'm telling you this is because I don't want you to miss any multi-part questions on the exam. So make sure if there's a short answer question, you answer every part. Okay, so don't omit a part of the question. And one thing some people did is they rushed through the exam. In fact, I talked to a student. They might, and I don't know if this student necessarily rushed through the exam, but in the past, I've seen it on paper tests too. Students rush through the exam, and because they rush through the exam, they miss the question. So you have, I believe, 80 minutes. Is that what I gave you? Use the full 80 minutes. There's no reason you need to be done in a half hour. For some reason, students think that they have to be done in like a half hour, 45 minutes. Use the full 80 minutes. Don't miss or leave anything blank. Yes? The ventilators? Okay. So there's 4 determinants. So I do have a lecture on this, but I'll repeat them. There's the 4 determinants. There's a lovely acronym to remember those determinants. All right, I will let your fellow students maybe tell you on the way out. All right, but substitutes is the most important thing, right? There's not any substitutes for ventilators, right? The next thing is habit or want versus need. This is definitely, it's not really a habit, but it's certainly a need, right? So it's either a need or a habit. That's going to make it inelastic as well. Where if it's not a habit or it's a luxury good or a want, whatever you want to call it, that's going to make it elastic, right? And then finally, income percent. Not finally. The third thing is income percent. If it's a high percent of your income, it's going to be more elastic, like a house or a car. Or if it's a low percent of your income, like gum, it's going to be more inelastic. And then time is the final thing. If it's a short period of time, it's going to be more inelastic. If it's a long period of time, it's going to be more elastic. Does that answer your question? Okay. All right. So I'd love to answer any other questions people might have. Yes, go ahead. Yes. Let me look at it. I don't remember. I often change the grade after when I as you saw with the P decreases, Q decreases. So it's not the end of the world if you do something like that. But ideally, it's easier for me, and I'm less likely to make a mistake grading it if we have that. So I'm going to go to the exams, and we're looking at the review. Do you remember where it was on the review? So if you don't want to see it, you don't have to look. This is the review, not the exam. 18. So of bikes to cars. So it's really bike to one car. So maybe I could have been more specific. But if you would have written something in there like 3 to 1, I would give it to you. Okay. So I apologize if that's not more clear. Other questions? So I think you had a question, right? Oh, that's the exact same. Are you kidding? Holy cow. Okay. Wow. Yes. Good. So that's a good question. The student asked, what's the formatting of the exam? Because there's obviously lots of ways you can format an exam. Unfortunately, there's no graphing. I wish I could make you graph in Blackboard. I can't. They don't have a graphing app, which frustrates the heck out of me, and I'm sorry for that. So there's no graphing, even though I think graphing would be nice. If you want to know exactly what the exam is going to look like, do the review. I really, really recommend doing the review beforehand. It's going to be 30 questions. So each quiz so far has been 10 questions. So you can think of the exam as it's like 3 quizzes combined. Okay. And it is a combination of true, false, multiple choice, fill in the blank, and short answer. All right. And just back to your question. So if you don't see it, assume it's per one. Okay. If you don't see it on the midterm, which I think I do have a question where it's per one. So keep that in mind. But I'll try to keep an eye out as I grade for anyone who makes the mistake you just suggested. Yes. No, I said it so you could do it 99 times. Someone asked me to take it infinite. I said I can't do infinite, but I can do 99. And so far, no one has complained that that is not enough. All right. Has anyone done it? You guys have done it? You're able to see it, right, in the grade book? Okay. Yeah. So even if you just take it once, you can see the result in the grade book. It's worth 0 points. I do that. I'm conflicted. It's nice to give you points for doing it, but then people start studying for the review and get stressed about the review. So it's not worth anything. And plus, that way I can let you take it 99 times if you want. So the student asked if the review is worth any points. It is not. I forgot to mention this week's Inquisitive, not Inquisitive, SmartWorks, you have infinite attempts. So, take advantage of that. Try to get 10 points on the Inquisitive and SmartWorks assignments. All right, now every SmartWorks, you have infinite attempts. Try to get 10 points, and if there's a math problem that you know I'm not going to ask, you're more than welcome to talk to other people, all right? So keep that in mind. Other questions? Yes? Sorry, let me put the document camera on. Sorry, go ahead. Economist? Adam Smith. I'm telling you the one that's on the exam, Adam Smith. Good question. Sadly, I've had people answer Karl Marx to some crazy questions. I don't know if it's just a commitment that they might have to a cause or something, but it's not the correct answer. He did not found economics. He criticized it, and people can agree or disagree with that, but he is not considered the founder of economics. Yes? I don't know if you can even answer this, but are the questions going to be in order like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3? I don't believe so. So some of the questions I took from, I write most of the questions, but there's a couple that I think are good enough that I took from the test bank. And those are the ones that are usually listed first, I believe. And then you can tell the rest are probably my questions. Sometimes you have to open a PDF, so make sure you have the most updated version of Adobe. I don't think that's ever been an issue, but I guess in principle it could be. Kind of like the trade problem. Remember on quiz 1, you had to open that PDF, so make sure that's there. But it is not in the order of, but I believe, so on the review, you could scroll back and forth, right? So you can do it in whatever order you want. I don't make you go in a certain order. Other questions? Well, I hope that was helpful, guys. Good luck. I'll see some of you on Tuesday, and thanks for coming. And for those of you watching, I'll just, oh, hold on, wait, someone asked a question online. If I take the review once by myself, but I'm studying with someone later, can I take it with a friend as well? Well, The answer is not with Respondus, and the reason I have Respondus on there is because I want you to make sure you know how to use it before the actual exam, because the worst is when you're taking it on Friday and then you don't know how Respondus works. However, it is the case that you can look over the answers afterwards together and then talk about those answers. Okay, so you can do that. All right. Thank you. That's all.